We have seen how to insert a checkpoints and what are the purpose of it. Now we will try to understand what is a rendezvous point. Before trying to understand what is a rendezvous point, let's try to understand the meaning of the rendezvous. The rendezvous, the meaning of it is the meeting. Okay, it could be a meeting between multiple people or just two people. So in the tool, when we are talking about a rendezvous point, it's the meeting of the virtual users. We do have something called virtual users. So this rendezvous point is the meeting of these virtual users. Now that we understood the meaning of it, let's try to understand why we use this rendezvous point. Well, in our scripts, there will be some requirements sometimes saying that a particular transaction needs to be executed by all the virtual users at the very same point of time. So it's as if like you are applying lot of load on a particular transaction. There is such kind of requirements coming to us. So when we have that kind of requirement, we have to insert this rendezvous point just above that transaction. So when you insert this rendezvous point just above that transaction, the controller will hold the execution of the virtual users until all the virtual users reaches that point. When all the virtual users reaches that point, which is that rendezvous point, then the controller will release all these virtual users at the same point of time so that all these virtual users will execute this transaction. So this is how a rendezvous point will be executed, and this is how the rendezvous point will be worked inside the controller. Now I'll try to explain the same thing using an example. Let's say you have a script and let's say you have only 3 transactions. One is the launch transaction, one is the login transaction, and finally we have something called a logout transaction. Let's say it's one simple script and you have these 3 transactions. Now the client wants a rendezvous point over here for the login transaction. So as a performance tester, you have to put a rendezvous point over here. And let's say you are executing this script with 3 virtual users. Now the first virtual user will execute the launch transaction and he will not execute the login transaction. He will come over here and wait. What is this first virtual user waiting for? He is waiting for the other 2 virtual users. Now the second virtual user also executes the launch transaction and he will come over here and he will wait. What is he waiting for? He is waiting for the third virtual user. Now the third virtual user will come over here and he will execute the launch transaction and he will come over here and wait. This is when the controller will release all these virtual users. As soon as they release all these 3 virtual users, these 3 virtual users will execute this login transaction at once. So this is how a rendezvous point works. Now I will demonstrate it for you on the tool how to insert this rendezvous point. But before I do that, there is one thing that you guys have to remember. The rendezvous point has any effect when you upload the script onto the controller and when you are running the script with multiple virtual users. But when you are running it with the VUGen, this rendezvous point has no effect at all. Having known that point, let's go ahead and demonstrate. For the demonstration of rendezvous point, I will use the same script which I have been using, which I have created earlier, my first script. Over here in the login action, I'll go ahead and record the steps for launch, login and logout. While recording, I will insert the rendezvous point for login. Let's go ahead and record it. Click on record button. Leave the options by default as they are. You want to record in the action called login, use the browser Chrome, and this is my application under test. We have been using these options for quite some time and I've explained clearly about these options in my earlier video. Now click on start recording. So I'm about to log in, and before the login I want to put a rendezvous point. So how do I do that? Very simple. So in this dialog box, which is belonging to the VUGen, click on insert rendezvous point and give a meaningful name. Since this rendezvous point is for login, maybe I'll put it as login underscore rendezvous. So now the rendezvous point has already been inserted. So go ahead and log in and click on sign off. So now the steps for launch, login and logout has been captured, and just before the login I have inserted a rendezvous point. Go ahead and stop recording. Now we will investigate the script to see where my rendezvous point is inserted. So just before the login, my rendezvous point should be inserted. We know this piece of code is for the login. Just before that, the piece of code for the rendezvous point is inserted. So what is the LR function for rendezvous point? LR underscore RENDZVOUS, and that's the name that you have given for rendezvous point. Since this rendezvous point has no effect when you run from VUGen, it will have only effect when you run from the controller. So this is how you put a rendezvous point into the script.